Good day, everyone. Today, I will be discussing Article 411 of the Philippine Electrical Code, which focuses on lighting systems operating at 30 volts or less and lighting equipment connected to Class 2 power sources. First, we must tackle the scope in this section. Covers lighting systems that operate at low voltage. This system must not exceed 30 volts AC or 60 volts DC, but when there is possible contact with water or moisture, the allowed limit is lower 15 volts AC or 30 volts DC. For installation involving immersion in water, we refer to Article 6.80. Second, the low voltage lighting system. In low-voltage lighting systems, three main components are required: an isolating power supply, low-voltage luminaires, and other equipment that are identified and approved for low-voltage use. The output of the power supply must not exceed 25 amperes regardless of the load. Next is the listing required. All low-voltage lighting systems must be leased, meaning they are tested and certified for safety. There are two acceptable setups. First, a listed system where all parts, luminaires, power supply, fittings are approved as one complete unit. Second, the assembly method, where we can combine listed parts such as low voltage luminaires, the power supply, fittings, and properly rated conductors. This is the specified location requirements. Now, for installation rules. If conductors pass through walls, floors, or ceilings and must follow the wiring methods in Chapter 3 or be supplied by a leased Class 2 source. When installations are nearly posts, spas, or fountains, lighting must be placed at least 3 meters from the water unless allowed by Article 6.80. Second, the secondary circuits. Secondary circuits, in this case, the lighting system must follow a specific rule. They should not grounded, must be isolated from branch circuits through isolation transformer, and barely conductors are not allowed indoors unless installed at least 2.1 meters above of the floor. Insulated conductor must be approved insulation installation method listed in article. Next, acceptable wiring methods. The wiring used. Class 2 cables, properly rated cords or conductors installed high enough above the floor, or any Chapter 3 wiring method. Lighting systems under this article must be supplied only from a 20 ampere branch circuit. If installed in hazardous location, they must also follow Articles 5.0 to 5.17. The next article we must tackle is the Article 4.22, which covers electrical appliances. It states that all appliances are covered by this article unless otherwise specified. Motor-operated appliances follow Article 4.30, while appliances using refrigerant compressors follow Article 4.40 unless modified by Article 4.22. Next, the GFCI must be easy to access, properly listed, and installed in any of these allowed locations. inside a branched circuit overcurrent device in a device or outlet on the supply circuit, built into the attachment plug within the supply cord not more than 300 mm from the plug or factor installed inside the appliances. All appliances operating at 50 volts or more must be listed. For installation rules, the branch circuit ratings must be highly enough to carry the appliance load without overheating. For an individual branch circuit, its rating must not be less than the appliance's marked ratings or the ratings combined appliances load if the appliances is motor operated and has no marked rating. Its circuits must follow the rules in Part 4.30.2. And now let's look at the rules for branch circuit ratings and overcurrent protection. For appliances that run continuously and, and are not motor operated, the branch circuit rating must be at least 125% of the appliance's marked ratings. The only time we can use 100% is when the device and the circuit are both listed for continuous loading at 100%. For household range and cooking appliances, we can follow Table 220316, and the conductor sides must meet the requirements of 210.2.1 A3. If the branch circuit supplies two or more loads, then the circuit ratings must follow the rules in 2.10.2.6. Next is the overcurrent protection. Appliances must follow the requirements in 4.22.2.2 A2G and 422.2.1. Also, if an appliance has a specific overcurrent device rating marked on its branch cir- um, branch circuit device cannot be higher than that rating. These rules ensures the appliances and wiring are properly protected from overheating and overload. Next, let's talk about the overcurrent protection requirements for different types of heating appliances. First, for household appliances with surface heating elements that have a demand of more than 60 amperes, the power supply needs to be split into two or more circuits, and each one must have overcurrent protection rated no higher than 50 amperes. Second, for infrared lamp heating appliances used in commercial or industrial settings, the rule is simple. They must also have a overcurrent protection not exceeding 50 amperes. Third, if we're dealing with open coil or exposed sheeted coil heating elements in commercial appliances, these must be protected by a device rated not more than 50 amperes as well. And finally, if the branch circuit supplies only one non-motor operated appliances, its overcurrent protection must follow the specific rating required for that appliances. And now for the rules on overcurrent protection for a single non-motor operated appliance. First, the overcurrent device must not exceed the rating mark on the appliance. If the appliance has no marked rating and its load is 13.3 amperes or less, the overcurrent protection must not exceed 20 amperes. If the appliance is over 13.3 amperes and still has no mark rating, the protection can be up to 150% of the appliance rated current. And if the 150% doesn't match a standard device rating, we are allowed to use the next higher standard rating. And now we talk about the electric heating appliances with resistant types element rated more than 48 amperes. For appliances that exceed 48 amps, the heating element must be subdivided into smaller individual loads. Each of these smaller loads must not exceed 48 amperes and each must have overcurrent protection rated not more than 60 amperes. The required overcurrent protective device must be factory installed or provided as a separate assembly by the manufacturer. They must also be accessible and suitable as branch circuit protection. This ensures that large heating appliances operated safely by dividing the electrical load and properly protecting each section. Next is the main conductors that supply the overcurrent protective devices are treated as branch circuit conductors. For commercial kitchen and cooking appliances, their shaded heating elements may be divided into circuits up to 120 amperes with protection not more than 150 amperes. If any of the following is true, the elements are built into an enclosed within the cooking surface. They are fully they are fully enclosed in a housing approved for this use or they are inside an ASME rated and stamped vessel. For water heaters and steam boilers, immersion type heating elements may also be subdivided into circuits up to 120 amperes protected no more than 150 amperes when they are installed in SME rated vessels, part of list instant, instantaneous water heaters or installed in low pressure or an open outlet water heater tanks or open outlet water heater tanks. Next is for motor operated appliances. Their motors must have overload protection following part 4.30.3. For hermetic refrigerant motors, compressors in air conditioning or refrigeration unit, overload protection must follow part 4.40.6. If an appliance requires overcurrent protection that is installed separately from the appliance, that the appliance must be marked with the proper data for selecting the protective device. At minimum, it must include the markings required in 4.30.1.7 and 4.40.1.4. For central heating equipment except fixed electrical space heating unit, it must be supplied by an individual branch circuit. However, there are two exceptions. First, auxiliary equipment such as pumps, valves, humidifiers, or electrostatic air cleaners may share the same branch circuit. Second, permanent connected air conditioning equipment may also be connected to the same branch circuit. Next is for storage type water heaters. Any fixed water heater with a capacity of 450 liters or less is treated as a continuous load. When sizing the branch circuit, the FPN reminds us to refer back to section 4.22.2.1 for the proper branch circuit rating. First, now for central vacuum outlet assemblies, the rules are, are as follow. First listed, central vacuum outlets may be connected to a branch circuit is allowed in section 2.10.2.6a. Second, the conductor used to connect the outlet must have an ampacity that is not lower than the ampacity of the branch circuit conductors they are connected to. Third, any accessible metal parts that do not carry current but may become energized must be connected to an equipment grounding conductors as required in Article 2.50.6.1. However, small incident metal parts like screws or rivets on insulating materials are not considered likely to become energized. Next, now we move to flexible cords under section 4.22.2.7. First, flexible cords are allowed in two situations: when an appliance needs frequent movement or when the cords helps reduce noise or vibration, and when the appliance is fastened in a in place but designed to be easily removed for maintenance and that and the manufacturer identifies it for flexible cords connection. Next, for electrically operated insect waste disposers, they may use a flexible cords and plug if the following conditions are met. Number 1. The flexible cord must end with a grounding type plug unless the disposer is listed as a double insulated, in which case a grounding plug is not required. Number 2. The cord length must be between 450 mm and 900 mm. Number 3. The receptacle must be positioned so the flexible cord is protected from physical damage. And number 4, the last, the receptacle must be accessible. Next, we have the rules for built-in dishwasher and trash compactors that use flexible cords. These appliances may be cord and plug connected if the manufacturer approves it and if all conditions are followed. First, the flexible cord must end with a grounding type plug unless the unit is listed as a double insulated, in which case a grounding plug is not required. For second, For trash compactors, the cord length must be between 900 millimeter and 1200 millimeter, measure from the plug to the back of the appliances. For built-in dishwashers, the cord length must be between 900 millimeter and 2000 millimeter, measured the same way. Fourth, the receptacle must be placed where the cord is protected from physical damage. Fifth, for trash compactors, the receptacle must be in the same space as the appliances or directly next to it. For dishwashers, the receptacle must be in the space beside the dishwashers and compartment. Dishwasher compartment. Lastly and final, the receptacle must always be accessible. Wall mount and second, wall mounted ovens and counter mounted cooking units may be permanently connected or cord and plug connected for easier servicing, but the plug and connector must be rated for the temperature of the installation area. In this slide, we tackle for wall-mounted ovens and counter-mounted cooking units. They can be permanently connected, or they may use a cord and plug connection only to make installation and servicing easier. If a plug is used, the connector or receptacle must be approved for the high temperature in the area where it's installed. For range hoods, a cord and plug connection is allowed if certain rules are followed. The cord must have a grounding type plug unless the hood is marked as double insulated. The cord length must be between 400 450 millimeter and 1200 millimeter. The receptacle must be placed where the cords won't be damaged, must be accessible, and must be supplied by its own individual branch circuit. Next is the electrically heated appliances that are meant to stay in one fixed location must be installed with enough space to protect nearby combustible materials from heat. Ceiling suspended or paddle fans must be supported properly. They should either be mounted independently of the outlet box or attached using a listed outlet box or support system designed specifically for fan installations. The fan canopy and outlet box must also provide enough space for the conductors and their connectors so they can be installed safely. Every outlet box must have a cover once installation is complete unless the fan canopy itself provides a cover. If there is combustible ceiling material exposed around the fan canopy with an area of 1160 millimeter or more, it must be covered with non-combustible material for safety. Next is the appliances cannot use any installation method that is not allowed in this article. For disconnecting means, every appliances must have a way to disconnect all ungrounded conductors at the same time. If an appliance is supplied by more than one branch circuit or feeder, all its disconnects must be grouped together and clearly identified. For permanently connected appliance is rated 300 volt amperes or 1/8 horsepower or less, the branch circuit breaker or switch may act as the disconnect as long as it is within sight of the appliance or can be locked in the off position. For appliances rated over 300 volt amperes, the branch circuit switch or breaker may also serve as disconnect if it is inside of the appliance or lockable. A note reminds installers to check additional rules for appliances that use utility switches. Next slide, we tackle for motor-operated appliances rated over 1/8 horsepower. The disconnecting means must follow the rules in 4.30.9.9 and 4.30.9.10. The disconnect must be within sight of the appliance or it must be able to be locked in the open or off position. An exception is allowed if the appliance has proper unit switch that meets the requirements in 4.22.3.6 B, C, or D, then the main switch or breaker used as the disconnect does not need to be within sight. For cord and plug connected appliances, an accessible plug and receptacle or an accessible separable connector can serve as the disconnecting means. If the plug connector is not accessible, then the appliance must have another disconnecting means that follows the same rule for permanently connected appliances. Next is the connection at the rear base of a range. Cord and plug connected household range can use a receptacle located at the rear base of the range, as long as it can be accessed from the front by removing the drawer. These setups satisfy the requirements for proper disconnection. The receptacle or connector used must have rating that is not lower than the rating of the appliance connected to it. However, demand factors allowed in a code may be applied when determining the required rating. A unit switch with a mark of position may serve as the disconnecting means if it disconnects all ungrounded conductors and if another disconnecting means is available in specific types of dwellings. In multifamily dwellings, the other disconnect must be inside the unit for on the same floor and may also control lighting or other appliances. In two-family dwellings, the, the other disconnect can be located either inside or outside the dwelling unit and may also control lighting and other appliances. Next slide, we tackle in one-family dwellings. The service disconnecting means is allowed to serve as the disconnecting means for appliances. In other types of buildings, the branch circuit switch or circuit breaker may be used as the disconnecting means as long as it is readily accessible for servicing the appliances. Switches and circuit breakers used as disconnecting means must be the indicating type, meaning they clearly show whether they are on or off. For cord and plug connected appliances with a single pole on-off switch, an Edison based lamp holder or a 15 or 20-ampere receptacle, the attachment plug must be polarized or grounding type. A non-polarized two-wire plug is only allowed for a listed double insulated shaver. Portable hydromassage units and handheld hair dryers must be built so that they protect people from electric shock even if the appliance is accidentally immersed in water, whether it is turned on or off. Next, it is covers safety requirements for electrically heated appliances. First, first is non-dwelling occupancies. Any heated appliances used on combustible material must have either a signal or a built-in temperature limiting device. Next, for a flexible cords, heater cords. Any plug-connected smoothing iron or heated appliances above 50 watts and reaching over 121 degrees Celsius, where the cord may touch, must use approved heater cords listed in the table 4.0.1.4. Other heated appliances, all other plug-connected heated appliances must also use an approved cord type from the same table following the proper usage guidelines. For immersion heaters, these must be built and installed so that all current carrying parts are fully insulated from the liquid they are placed in. Finally, for stand, every smoothing iron and other heated appliances meant to be used on combustible material must have an approved stand either attached or as a separate accessory. Now we look Now we look at the safety rules for flatirons and water heaters. First, electrically heated flatirons must have a clearly identified temperature limiting device to prevent overheating. Water heaters, whether storage type or instantaneous type, they must have temperature limiting control in addition to the regular thermostat. This extra bar must detect the maximum detect the maximum water temperature and be either a trip-free manual reset type or a type with a replaceable element. Also, these water heaters must be marked to require a temperature and pressure relief valve. There are two exemptions: large storage heaters designed for 82 degrees Celsius or higher and 60 kilowatt or above. Very small instantaneous heaters, 4 liters or less, specifically identified for such as use. For reference, see ANCI CSA standard for relief valves. Next is, is the rules for infrared lamps, pipe heating assemblies, and appliance marking. Lamps 300 watts or above below may use medium base and switch porcelain lamp holders for any lamp holder approved for lamps of that rating. For lamps over 300 watts, regular screw lamp holders cannot be used unless they are specifically identified as suitable for high wattage infrared lamps. Next, for pipe heating assemblies used to prevent pipes from freezing. These units must be listed, meaning properly tested and approved for safety. Moving on to the marking requirements. All appliances must have a nameplate showing the identifying name, voltage, and either amperes or watts, and if it operates on a specific frequency, it must be marked. If the appliance need external motor overload protection, this must also be indicated. The nameplate must be placed in a location that is visible for easily accessible after installation. Finally, heating elements rated over 1 ampere that can be replaced in the field must be clearly marked with their voltage and ampere ampere or wattage, or with the manufacturer parts number. Next, we discuss we discuss the marking requirements for appliances that contain motor and other electrical loads. First, under nameplate horsepower markings. If an appliance has a motor and its nameplate shows a horsepower rating, the rating cannot be lower than the horsepower shown on the motor itself. If the appliance has multiple motors or motors combined with other loads, the nameplate must show the total equivalent horsepower of all loads combined, calculated as required by the code. Next, under additional nameplate markings, appliances that do not come factory equipped with a cord and plug must follow addition marking rules aside from the basic nameplate information. The appliances must also indicate the minimum supply circuit conductor ampacity, meaning the minimum wire size needed, and the maximum rating of the overcurrent protective device, like a fuse or circuit breaker. This extra marking is not required if the appliances already complies with the basic nameplate rules and both values do not exceed 15 amperes. Next is that the start with the alternative marking method for appliances with motors and other loads. First, the code allows an alternative way of marking. Instead of showing the combined horsepower, the nameplate may list the large motor ratings in volts and amperes and the additional load ratings in volt and amperes or in volt and watts. Very, very small loads motor, 1 horsepower or less, or non-motor loads, 1 ampere or less may be left out, unless these small loads are actually the main load of the appliances. Next, the slides introduce Article 4.24 Fixed Electrical Space Heating Equipment. General rules. These articles cover fixed electrical equipment used specifically for space heating. Examples include heating cables, unit heaters, boilers, central heating system, other fixed electric heaters approved for space heating. It does not apply to process heating, industrial heating, and room air conditioning. Additional requirements in Section 4.24.1.2. If the heating equipment includes a hermetic refrigerant motor compressor, it must also comply with the Article 4.40, which cover refrigeration and air conditioning equipments. Next slide explains the rules of branch circuit and installation or fixed electric space heating equipment. First, under the section 4.24.1.3 branch circuit. Branch circuit requirements. Individual branch circuit may supply any wattage or voltage ampere rating of fixed electric heaters as long as the circuit is properly rated. If one branch circuit feeds two or more heating outlets, it must not exceed 30 amperes. But in non-dwelling areas, infrared heaters may use branch circuit up to 50 amperes. Second, branch circuit sizing. All fixed electric space heating equipment and motors are treated as continuous load, meaning they must be sized for long duration operation. Unlisted equipment. Electric baseboard heaters, heating cables, duct heaters, and radiant heating systems must list and labeled to ensure safety. Moving to section 4.24.2 installation. General permanently installed electric baseboard heaters that have factory installed receptacles may be used instead of the required wall receptacle, but these receptacles cannot be connected to the heater's circuit. Note, some heaters include instructions that do not allow installation below wall receptacles. Supply conductors. If the heaters requires supply conductors rated above 60 degrees Celsius, the equipment must be clearly and permanently marked, and the marking must remain visible after installation. Next is the slide covers the installation rules for fixed electric space heating equipment. First, under section 4.24.2.4 locations. Exposed to physical damage. If the heater is placed where it can be physically damaged, it must be protected using approved methods. B. Damp or wet location. Any heater installed in damp or wet areas must be listed for those locations and built so water cannot enter wiring, electrical parts, or ductwork. There are two notes. One refers to equipment exposed to deteriorating agent, and other applies to full dig areas. Next is section 4.24.2.5 Spacing from combustible materials. Heaters must be installed with proper spacing from combustible materials unless the equipment is specifically listed to be installed in direct contact with them. Now, for control and protection. Disconnecting means there must be a way to simultaneously disconnect the heaters, motor controller, and any supplementary overcurrent device from all ungrounded conductors. If the equipment is supplied by multiple sources, the disconnects must be grouped and clearly identified. The disconnecting means must be rated at 125% of the total load and must be lockable. Next slide explains the rules when heaters have supplementary overcurrent protection. First, heating equipment with supplementary overcurrent protection. The disconnecting means must be within sight of the supplementary protection on the supply side if fuses are used, then it must meet either A1 or A2. First, heater with no motor over 1/8 horsepower. The disconnecting means or a unit switch may serve as the disconnecting means is within sight of the controller and heater or it is lockable. Second, heater with motors over 1/8 horsepower. The, the same disconnecting means may be used if first, it is within sight of the motor controller and heater and complies with Article 4.30.9 or if the if the heater and motor covers 1/8 each horsepower use a single approved unit switch, the disconnecting may located out of sight. Next slide discusses heaters without supplementary overcurrent protection. First, without motor or motor not over 1/8 horsepower. The branch circuit breakers or switch may act as the disconnecting means as long as it is within sight or lockable. Motor over 1/8 horsepower. A, disca- a disconnected must be within sight of the motor controller or it must meet the same rules listed in 4.24.8.1A2. Unit switches as disconnecting means. A heater's built-in unit switch mark-off may serve as the disconnected, but only if another disconnecting means is available depending the type of dwelling. Multi-family dwellings. The other disconnect must be inside the unit or on the same floor, and it may also control lights and appliances. Two family two family dwellings. The other disconnect can be inside or outside the unit, and it may also control lights and appliances. Next, the continuous with the rules of disconnecting means in different occupancies. One family dwellings. In one family dwellings house, the service disconnect is allowed to serve as the other disconnecting means for the fixed heaters. Other occupancies. In other types of buildings, the branch circuit breaker or switch may be used as the other disconnect as long as it is readily accessible for servicing the heater. Now we move to we, we move to Article 4.24.3.2 Thermostatically controlled switching devices. When, when thermostat switch can act as disconnects. Thermostats or combination thermostat switches may serve as both the controller and the disconnect if they meet all these conditions. They must have clearly marked off position. When switched off manually, they must open all ungrounded conductors. Die. Third, the circuit must not turn back on automatically after being switched off. The device must be installed in the proper location following section 4.24.3.1. Next, next slide covers thermostat that cannot be used as disconnecting means. Thermostats that do not interrupt all ungrounded conductors. If a thermostat does not directly open all ungrounded conductors, or if it operates remote control circuit, is it does not need to meet the previous requirements. However, these types of thermostats cannot serve as the disconnecting means. Next is section 4.24.3.3, indicating types devices. Any switch of circuit breakers used as a disconnect must be the indicating type of, meaning it clearly shows whether it is on or off. Now, overcurrent protection. A branch circuit device electric space heaters may use standard branch circuit overcurrent device from Article 2.10 unless the heater has motors requiring special protection under Articles 4.30 or 4.40. B. Resistant elements. For heaters using resistant elements. First, they must be protected at not more than 60 amperes. Second, if the equipment is rated more than 48 amperes, the heating elements must be subdivided and each section must not exceed 48 amperes. If any subdivided load is less than 48 amperes, the protective device must follow 4.24.1.3b. Last, boilers with ASME rated immersion element may follow special rules in 4.24.7.3. Next, the continuous rules for subdivided heating loads. C. Supplementary overcurrent protection devices for subdivided loads. First, the overcurrent devices must be factory installed or supplied by the manufacturer. They must be accessible but not necessarily readily accessible. They must be suitable for branch circuit protection. If, ca- of, if cartridge fuses are used, one disconnect may control all the subdivided loads. D. Branch circuit conductors. The conductors feeding the supplementary overcurrent devices are treated as branch circuit conductors. For heaters, 50 kilowatt or larger, the conductors may be sized at not less than 100% of the nameplate rating if all these conditions are met. First, the heater is marked with minimum conductor size. Second, the conductors are not smaller than that minimum size. Third, a temperature-controlled device cycle the heater's operation. Next, we discuss the dis Next slide, we discuss conductor sizing for subdivided loads. When heaters are divided into smaller circuits, the wires that connect the heaters to the supplementary overcurrent protective device must be sized at least 125% of the load. However, the heaters 50, 50 kilowatts and above, the conductors may be sized at 100% of the load if three conditions are met. The heater, the heater must be marked with a minimum conductor size. Second, the installed conductors must not be smaller than that marked size. Third, the heater must use a temperature-activated device that controls its cycling. For marking requirements, every fixed electric heater must have a nameplate showing the brand and its electrical rating, either volts and watts or volts and amps. If it AC only, DC only, or both, that must also be shown. For heaters with motors larger than 180 horsepower, the nameplate must list the motor voltage amperage and frequency. Next is the nameplate must be placed somewhere visible for easy to access after installation. All replicable heating elements must be marked with the voltage and watt or amp rating. For heating cables, any non-heating leads must be less 2100 mm long, and each cable must be marked with the manufacturer's name or symbol, model number, and its electrical rating. Wiring above heated ceilings must be 50 mm or more above the heating area, and conductor ampacity must be based on an assumed temperature of 50 degrees Celsius. If the wiring is placed above at least 50 mm of insulation, no temperature correction is needed. Next is the heating cables may extend beyond the rooms where they start, but there are several places where they cannot be installed. They are not allowed in closet with one special exemption. Second, across the top of walls meeting ceilings. Third, over full height partitions. Fourth, under or through walls. Fifth, over cabinets that are too close to the ceiling thumb. Sixth, thumb or shower walls. Seven, or under built-ins with no floor clearance. However, heating cables can be used in closet ceilings as lower temperature heaters to reduce humidity, only if they are installed in areas where, where nothing blocks heat from, from floor to ceiling. Next, we look at the clearance and installation rules for heating cables in ceilings. Heating cables must be kept 200 mm away from the edge of outlet or junction boxes used for surface mounted lights. They also need at least 50 mm clearance from recessed lights, vents, or similar openings. No heating cable should ever be covered by a surface mounted equipment. For splicing, heating cables can only be altered using manufacturer-approved splices. In ceiling installations, cables must not be placed inside walls unless it is just a single run that must pass vertically to reach a drop ceiling. Adjacent cables runs must always follow the spacing provided in the manufacturer's instruction. Next, next slide. The heating cable must be installed only fire-resistant surface like gypsum, gypsum board, or plaster lath. If the surface is metal or conductive, it must be fully separated from the cable using plaster or other approved insulating material. All splices along with at least 75 mm of the non-heating lead must be completed embedded in plaster or dry board just like the cable itself. The entire ceiling must be finished with a 13 mm layer of sand plaster or another approved non-insulating finish. Cables must be properly secured using approved staples, tape, plaster, or spreaders. If using regular cable, supports must be spaced every 400 mm. If using cable rated for long spans, support may be up to 1,800 millimeter apart. Metal staples must not be used within electrically conductive surfaces. Next is Next slide is for dry board ceiling installation. The whole ceiling under the heating cables must be covered with gypsum board no thicker than 15 millimeter. The space between the top layer and bottom layer must be filled completely with non-shrinking, thermally conductive plaster. Cable must not touch any metal or conductive surface. When installed near joints, cable must run parallel to the joints with a 65 millimeter clear spacing centered under each joint. The finishing layer must be installed so that nails or screw do not hit the cable. Cables should not only cross joints at the end of the room, unless the manufacturer requires crossing elsewhere to avoid lights or ceiling penetration. Next is for the finished ceiling. Heating cable ceilings must not be covered with decorative panels or beams made of insulating materials like wood, fiber, or plastic. However, paint, paint, wallpapers, and other approved finish are allowed. For non-heating leads, they must be installed using approved wiring methods from the junction box into the ceiling. At least 150 millimeter of free non-heating lead must remain inside the junction box, and the markings must be visible. Any excess non-heating lead must not be cut. Instead, it should be secured to the ceiling and embedded in plaster, leaving only enough length to reach the junction box with the required 150 millimeter of free lead. In this slide, we tackle the installation of cables in concrete or poured masonry floors. When heating cables are installed in concrete or poured masonry floors, adjacent runs must follow the manufacturer's spacing instructions. The cables must be held in place using non-metallic frames, spreaders, or other approved supports while the concrete is poured. Where leads exit the floor, they must be protected using conduit, metal or non-metallic, and proper bushings or fittings must be used where the leads emerge. Ground fault circuit interrupter or GFCI protection must be provided for heated floors located in kitchen, bathrooms, and hydromassage tubs area. Next is that for installation of cable under the floor coverings. For heating cables installed under floor coverings, the cable must be specifically identified as suitable for this type of installation. Cables cannot, cannot cross expansion joints unless special expansion fittings are provided. Connections to supply conductors must follow the installation instructions or other approved wiring method in Chapter 3. The cables must be properly secured under the flooring as the manufacturer directs, and GFCI protection is required for safety. A grounding method, such as a copper braid or metal sheet, must be included along the heated length. Finally, all cable installation must be carefully inspected before being covered or concealed to ensure that no damage has occurred. Next is the is that for heating system, manufacturers manufacturers must provide that indicate the installation uses electric space heating cables. These labels must be placed on the panel board to identify the branch circuits that supply the heating cables. If the cables remains visible and clearly identifiable after installation, the labels are not required. Next, for duct heaters. These rules apply to heaters mounted in the airstream when the air moving unit is not built into the heater. Duct heaters must be identified as suitable for duct installation, and there must be a way to ensure even airflow over the heater surface. If the heater is installed close to elbows, air conditioners, or obstructions, additional devices like turning vanes or pressure plates may be needed to distribute the airflow properly. Next slide. The we Next slide is that the duct heaters designed for higher inlet air temperatures must be marked as suitable for that use. When duct heaters when, when duct heaters are installed near heat pumps or air conditioners closer than 1200 mm, both the heater and the HVAC equipment must be identified as compatible. If condensation can occur, the heater must be rated for use with air conditioning systems. There must also be an interlock to ensure the fan turns on whenever the heater is energized, although delays by time or temperature are allowed. Each duct heater must have a built-in temperature limiting control that automatically resets, plus an additional independent safety control that disconnects enough conductors to stop heating. These backup devices must require manual reset or replacement. Next is the next slide, which I call the disconnecting means for a duct heater must be installed at or within sight of the controller unless otherwise allowed by the code. For installation, duct heaters must follow the manufacturer's instruction and must not create hazards. They must also they must also be placed so that controls and heating elements can be accessed, replaced, and cleaned when needed. Adequate clearance must be maintained, and additional guidance is available in NFPA 90A and NFPA 90B. That's all. Thank you for watching and God bless.